Yeah.
Steph Curry.
Yeah, he's so adorable, isn't he?
Uh-oh. Where
People love Steph Curry.
they love him. They love Riley. the whole
Moms
thing.
love him.
Everybody.
Kids love him.
He's easy to love.
He's like the Pied Piper. My kids love Steph Curry. Like they just
What
love
is it
him.
about him? Why?
I don't know. I think because he looks like a kid.
He does.
He really does. He looks like an 11-year-old kid who with a grown-up body. He's like Tom Hanks body switching movie or something.
Where do we put the Warriors now then in the pantheon of teams over the last generation? Let's go back to Celtics, Lakers, we got Bulls, Rockets.
Yeah.
The Pistons are in there somewhere. Where do we put them?
To me, it's like you earn a place into the conversation. So I don't know where they rank. I don't like the whole thing about what if the '86 Celtics played the 2016 Warriors. Like you play basketball differently now. It's like ranking a TV from 1986 versus a TV now. It's like, when you watch how basketball is played on a fast break, guys go outside now to shoot corner threes.
Right.
In the '86, they went for layups. The whole goal is to get close to the rim and get 2 points. So could the '86 Celtics have adapted to the way teams play now? Like, yeah, but if you just took them from a time machine, they would get slaughtered because they'd just be shooting threes. They would be like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
They'd just be like fish out of water. But I think going 73-9, coming back from 3-1 OKC was incredible. Like, just incredible. Like, Game 6 to me was one of the most historic games in the last 20 years. OKC was better. I thought they had a better team. And Golden State just got hot. And they just had this ability over and over again. Every time you thought it was over, they just start making shots. And you're like, oh, that's not good. Oh, that went in. Oh, they're only down 5. Oh my God, they're up 1.
It's happening.
And they have this way of coming back. Like it's almost like a serial killer in a movie. Like they just can't kill them. They come back, they make a 3, they get 6 points really quick. And so I thought that was amazing. To me, they needed to do what they did. And to go through KD and Westbrook and then LeBron is great. Awesome, an all-time team. I would still take the '86 Celtics over anyone if my life depended on it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Over the Bulls?
I think they would have figured out the rules. It would have taken 2 games. Maybe they go down 0-2. They were like, oh, we got to guard these 3-point guys.
I like Larry on the perimeter. I think
Yeah,
they'd
I think
be
Larry
okay.
would have been fine.
Yeah,
he would have been okay.
Now, how do we talk about LeBron now? 6 consecutive finals. That's impressive.
Yeah.
But if you only win 2 of them, what does that mean? What's the legacy?
He's fine. He made 6 straight finals like that. Some of those teams weren't very, very good.
Yeah.
The 2014 Miami team certainly wasn't that good. Last year's Cavs team. I think he's the best forward ever. Like, it kills me to say it. Like, Bird's my favorite player ever, but they've played the same number of seasons now, Bird's played 13 years, or he played 13 years. LeBron's played 13 years and doesn't seem to be deteriorating, which isn't very logical. And his hairline is better than it was 5 years ago, which is
that's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But all the stuff he does, and I think the thing that makes him really special over than all the other stuff is just how durable he is. There's never been an NBA star that just doesn't get hurt. The guy never gets hurt. He's never missed a playoff game. Every great player has missed like a playoffs or half of a season, or they played hurt, or they missed it. I mean, Curry couldn't even make it 2 postseasons. He got hurt. And LeBron is just like indestructible. And I think his legacy is just going to be the constant greatness year after year. I forget who said this. I think it was some talking head on one of those channels, but they were talking about like everybody's got a prime, but the best players, it's the width of the prime that makes them special. Right. And LeBron's been in his prime now since 2008. And it's 2016. Like, his prime has lasted the entire Obama presidency, and it's now going to extend into the Trump presidency.
That's right.
It's amazing.
So in your basketball book, your top 5, granted this was 7 years ago.
I know. You'll know that I'm divorced and almost broke when I read another version of the book.
Another 750 pages.
You'll know something horrible happened in my personal life. I was like, oh no, he rewrote the book. It's terrible.
Michael, Russell, Kareem, Magic, and Bird. That was your top 5 at the time. So are you saying now that LeBron leapfrogs your man Larry Bird into the number 5
No,
slot?
I think they're kind of, it's like two cars at a stoplight. They're
this
like
is
right
so
here, like
cop
this.
out.
I know. I think what's changed is that if you're making an all-time team, if you're just like, we get to pull everyone out from a time machine and the aliens have come and we have to beat the aliens, but we have the ability to grab 5 players.
In their primes.
In their
Yeah,
primes.
yeah.
Bird, Magic, Jordan, and LeBron are the first 4 picks in some order. And then we just get a center. And it could be anybody. It could be Kareem, it could be Shaq, it could be Bill
Right,
Russell,
right.
whatever. But you know you're having those 4 guys because those 4 guys are going to be unbelievable together.
And you let LeBron play point in that scenario,
You're
maybe?
fine. It doesn't
All
matter.
right. I'm
Those
just
guys
worried
all
about
know. No, Magic's running the point.
Oh, Magic, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
LeBron is like a point forward, so he can go underneath. He's out, and we're fine. We'll throw in and pick any center, and we're beating the aliens.
With the earth on the line.
With
That's
the
your
earth on the
5
line.
right there.
That's my 4, and then just give me any center. I don't care. I'd probably take Bill Walton, but I'm a Bill Walton
Really?
nerd. Yeah. The one Bill Walton era was pretty great. What's funny is when I wrote that book, YouTube wasn't really what it is now. So I had a friend at NBA Entertainment who would just send me these DVDs. And I was just going through these DVDs, and obviously my wife just loved that. I'm like, I gotta watch this
Research.
Milwaukee Philly game from 1981. Oh my God, I'm going upstairs. But now it's just YouTube. Everything's on YouTube. Just basketball nerds putting stuff up on YouTube. And then the advanced metrics thing was the other thing that's changed. So I think that book would be totally different now, but I'm still glad I wrote it. It's 3 years of my life.
Talking about that book, for me, I knew you had a big following. I knew
Yeah.
people loved your column and your podcast. But I'll never forget, we were doing the show one morning, and we used to do a thing where we put up a graphic of the best sellers.
Yeah.
And when that was number 1, not the number 1 sports book, but the number 1 book in the country, New York Times bestseller, I went, wow. Like
Yeah.
the reach is even bigger than I thought it was. What was the moment for you where you felt like things really started to blow up?
That was
you?
a great year for me because I felt like I really got good at writing my column. I was like the happiest that year. I just kind of knew what I was doing. It was not easy to do, but I could write a column in 3 hours, like my magazine column, and I never had to think about it. You just boom, boom.
Dialed in, yeah.
And my podcast was starting to come alive. Like I really liked the format, and I wasn't good at that yet, but I was working on being good at it. And I knew I was gonna be good at it eventually, because I could get good performances from the guests. I was just terrible at hosting it, and then I slowly got better. But the book came out, and everyone told me it's too long. This is ridiculous. It's 700 pages. The bookstores can't carry it, and I just didn't listen to anybody. And so I was right and I was wrong, because I think the move should have been to just split those into 2 books. I would have gotten paid twice.
Right.
What was I thinking?
Right.
But at the time, it was like, we released it in the end of October. It was like the hardest time to release a book. And I'm super competitive. That's like my best quality and probably my worst quality. And I thought I had a chance to get in the top 5 because I'd measured it out. The last time I did my Red Sox books, we didn't really understand how the rankings worked.
Right.
So I figured out, like, I got to stack everything for that first week, push the pre-orders. The pre-orders rule changed. So we did I think 8 or 9 book signings in the first week. I was like a crazy person.
Wow.
But I didn't think it was going to be number 1. Mitch Albom had a book, he wrote about some dead person.
Yeah.
He was in there. Gladwell was in there.
Wednesdays,
Yeah, and I was like, it can't be number 1. And then it happened. So that was a great day. I was with my dad too, which I know you can identify with. And
but by all rights, that book shouldn't be number 1. Not because it's not
no,
good, but
a
it's a
700-page book of
about
opinions.
basketball.
Yeah, it wasn't like it should not have been number 1. So that was great. I think the book tour, seeing the people that showed up and that was good, because you don't know. I'm in my office or a coffee place half the time writing, and you don't know how many people are reading. Like, you know what the numbers are, but yeah, the dad part was really cool because, and you say, like, you have kids, you get it now. Like, you're super, super duper over the top, crazy proud of anything your kid does.
Yep.
Like, your kid's like, I just took a great poop, and you're like, oh, that's incredible. And I think if one of your kids actually does something, it's at the that's it. Like it's totally tops anything you could do as a person.
Right,
Like my
that's
daughter
right.
just won a soccer tournament last week, and I was like way more excited about that than my show launching.
But
you
also,
know?
you and your dad shared all this stuff that you're
Totally.
writing about.
Yeah,
it
he
came
was
from
in
your
the book.
conversations.
Yeah,
It was
and
about him in a lot of ways,
yeah,
right?
it was the book I always wanted Bob Ryan to write, and he never wrote.
Yeah.
So I liked that he liked it. It was cool. But then the next month we had, I think it was like 5 days later, 30 for 30 launched. Or maybe it was 4 weeks before 30 for 30 launched. And that was its own really cool thing because we'd worked on that for a long time. ESPN was so weird. They spent all this money on it, but they didn't promote it. And this sounds crazy now because they've gotten so much mileage out of it. But at the time, like, I remember Brett Favre went back to Green Bay the night before. The night before we launched 30 for 30, I was like, this is great.
Here we go.
That they're gonna run commercials the whole time. They're gonna do that. And they literally ran like a 1-10-second ad. And I watched the whole game and I couldn't believe it. I was like, nobody knows this is coming. Like the only press we had done were the interviews that I did. And that night I sent an email out to everybody in my life, like people from high school, college, people I'd worked with. It was like, hey, we have this series coming called 30 for 30. I just spent 2 years on it. Can you spread the word? It would be awesome. I swear to God, I have the email
blast.
Yeah, it was an email blast to like 100 people. Can you spread the word for me? Because this is before Facebook. And to watch it blossom from that, where I had to do that, to by the time we did the second series, they're
Right.
promoting the hell out of it, and we did awards. So that was my favorite year, 2009.
So going back, let's go back to the beginning of how this all started for you. So you go to journalism, you get your master's in journalism
Yep.
in Boston. You work for the Boston Herald.
I did for 3 years.
And what was that job like? Was it frustrating to you to be there, watching guys who you didn't think maybe were quite as talented or as good a writer?
Yeah, it wasn't a meritocracy, and I'm super competitive, and I was just like, I should have a column. But I was probably a total too. You know?
How old are you at this point? Late 20s?
My early 20s.
Yeah, okay.
And I just assumed I had a column in college that did well, and I just assumed I'd graduate and get a column. And life doesn't work that way. And it was actually like 20 years ago this month, like I decided to try to freelance, and I left the Herald. It's just a comedy of errors with, I was writing a column for the Boston Phoenix, the editor changed, and all of a sudden I didn't have anything. And I started bartending and working at this restaurant for in the summer of '96. And I didn't write anything for a year.
Really?
Yeah, the only thing I was working on a TV script. I wrote like 5 episodes of a TV script. I had no idea how to write it.
Is that somewhere right now?
Yeah, it's unburied on some hard drive. It's terrible. And I was like, I'll write a TV show. And I was like, no, this is, and but fortunately for me, the internet was in its nascent stage, but I was at least able to kind of get online with the sports column, and then it took a while, but it snowballed. The first 2 years I had a column online, you could only read it if you had an AOL address. It was a little limiting.
Yeah.
Nobody knew how to forward links, and then eventually people kind of learned. And by 2000, I was like, this should happen for me. And then it took like an extra year, like everything does. And then finally ESPN came calling, but I was ready. I was ready in 2000.
So what was the pitch to AOL when you were just a bartender, hadn't written anything for a year? What did you sell them on?
They had a guy named Boston's Movie Guy. It was Digital City Boston. And then this guy, and it was a big picture of him that they took professionally, and then he had movie reviews. And I was like, I want to be your sports guy. And I just badgered them until they finally, I made $50 a week for the first 3 months, which I didn't care because I had bartending money anyway, but I was like, I would have done it for anything.
Right.
I probably would have paid them. And I just made all my mistakes over the next year. It's funny because I'm friends with Katie Nolan, and her story is a little bit similar, where she was just online making videos that nobody was watching, but it actually got her the reps to know what to do. So it took about a year and a half, and in like March of '99, I wrote a couple columns that started to get passed around, and that's when I was like, oh, this is starting to happen. Mm-hmm. But I believed in the internet. It sounds weird to say this now because it's like, well, people didn't believe in the internet, but I was writing on there for 4 years, and you told people you wrote for the internet, and they looked at you like, do you get paid for that? Like, how does that work? Oh, the internet, that's cool, and you could tell they felt awkward.
Right.
But
Is that published?
Yeah. But Pedro Martinez got traded to the Red Sox at the end of '98 in like October,
Right.
November. And I wrote a column about it on my site in the morning. And it went up at like 1 o'clock. AOL led the website with it. And it was up all day, all night. And then the Boston Globe came out the next morning. And my column was 18 hours ahead of the Boston Globe. And I remember telling my girlfriend, I was like, I think the internet's gonna win.
Yeah.
Like, by anyone who read me had already read a good take before the newspaper. Like, this is a good sign for the internet, right? And to just watch it snowball. By 2000, you knew. Like when Gammons went to ESPN, I think that was the big moment, at least for sports on the internet.
Well, that moment for you is a window into what happened to media, right? You were up early. You had a take before the newspaper.
Totally.
And the rest is history. Right?
And the newspapers didn't see it at all.
Right.
I think we're seeing that now with broadcasting companies to some degree. I think people get stuck in where, oh no, this worked, this is how it goes, and things change and they don't move with it.
Right.
I think that was a big problem for ESPN. That's a big problem for the broadcast networks, where if things are going a certain direction, you kind of have to go with that direction. You can't try to protect what you already have. That's when you get into trouble, and that's like the history of everything. The people who got in the most trouble are people trying to protect what used to exist. That's when you're screwed. And the newspapers, like for years, they no, the internet, can't give it away. No, people are still going to want to read at the kitchen table. It's like, yeah, my dad wants to read at the kitchen table. He's 60, Our dads, that's their generation, but kids today. And now it's like, as we were trying to figure out like what The Ringer is as a website and where content's going and stuff like that, 5 years ago when we created Grantland, like this didn't exist.
Right.
And then by 2015, people are reading us and they're doing this. And it's like, well, my column's 7,800 words today. Maybe it's not an easy thing to read on an iPhone. So you got to move and you got to adapt with it.
So it seems to me, I remember when I first read your columns, I was like, oh, this guy's speaking the way I speak. He's talking the way I talk to my friends. He's making Karate Kid references and Rocky IV references and shares my theory that
Vegas. I was like the first one to write about Vegas. Nobody was writing about Vegas.
But like before that, sports columns came from the press box, right? And they were handed down.
Yeah.
And the feeling with you was that you were in the bleachers with us. And you were saying
well, I literally was. They wouldn't let me in the press box.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So was that a conscious thing for you? Like nobody's writing from the fans' point of view? Or was that just the way you write?
It was half and half. It was a lot of the writers that I liked wrote that way. People that I grew up with reading, and a book that was really influential for me was this book called Wait Till Next Year. It was William Goldman and Mike Lupica. Yeah. Goldman was the fan, Lupica was the reporter, and they exchanged chapters about this year in New York sports. And the way Goldman wrote, I was like, why doesn't everyone write about sports that way? And there are a couple of people in Boston that had a little of that, like Ray Fitzgerald, Lee Montville. But when I started writing my columns, I asked for press credentials, like I wanted to go. And they were like, well, who do you write for? Like, no. So then it's like, all right, how do I adapt? And in '99, especially when Pedro was really at his apex, I was scalping tickets to go to the games because I wanted to go and I wanted to write about it.
Right.
And write pieces about him. So, it turned out to be the kind of fortuitous. I think probably sports writing would have drifted that way anyway because everybody is so first person-y now with anything, but it was nice to get a head start on it. And also, like, when you're not attached to, I have to go into the locker room and I'm going to interview these people and I'm going to write my lead, and you actually have to put real thought into, if I don't write something interesting, I'll have 0 readers today. It makes you try to take chances, and that's the coolest thing about what it was like to write back then. I think now people are afraid to take chances. I think with social media and stuff, everyone's trying to be safe, and you can almost see them carefully tiptoeing around the angle they wanted to make, or they go the other way and they're just super mean-spirited. Right. And you don't see a lot of chances taken with writing anymore. I include myself. Like it's especially once I hit a certain level, like it's really risky for me to take a chance with a piece.
You obviously have heard from the guys who've been around for a long time, sports writers.
Yeah.
Bill Simmons. Blah, blah, blah. How much of that did you hear right at the beginning? He's not a real sports writer. He's not in the box. He doesn't talk to the players.
Oh, I still probably hear it now. And I haven't even written a column in over a year. No, it's things you say when you're trying to keep something that used to exist in place, you know? And there's part of it I get, like that if you grew up in a way like, if I rip an athlete, I'm gonna go face him the next day.
Yeah.
But what was weird is sports radio has been around since the 1970s, and those guys didn't go face the people the next day. And same thing for TV people.
Right.
And so I never really understood that. I think most sports writers just aren't that smart. Like they never really thought it through. It's like, but what about that sports radio guy that you're on his show? He never goes
Right.
to the locker room.
Right.
Why is he okay? But I think that's changed. I think now we've found a pretty good balance of people know not to rip athletes too much. Like there's going to be a backlash, and it's really easy for people to turn stuff on the writer. It's also been fun when athletes fight back, which I think is a fun wrinkle of somebody like you write a story about Kevin Durant, he just comes right at you on Twitter. It's like, oh, ooh, sorry, Kevin.
Well, you got some of that with your Isaiah thing, right? Like, is there
10 years ago, yeah.
Is there a thing though where you're sort of writing in your room and it's for you a little bit and for your readers, and you don't realize that the people you're writing about may see it, and then Isaiah goes on a radio show and comes at you, right?
Yeah, and then we hashed it out. But
yeah,
the mid 2000s, you could feel it changing. I mean, for me, I don't know, not for everybody, but just like, I didn't realize my column was getting kind of as read as it was, and I was still writing it like I was the guy from 1998, just taking shots at people. And what you realize is that the best thing that can happen in that respect is to have somebody write something critical about you.
Right.
And then you're like, this feeling sucks. Is this what other people feel like? When it's almost like you're not writing about real people. It's like, those are real people.
Right.
So I think that was, that makes you think like, if I write this guy's gonna see it. And I think that one time I wrote this piece about Greg Oden in 2007 after he got hurt. Mm-hmm. And basically it was like, if you watch this guy walk, he was destined to get hurt. And it didn't have the right spirit to it. It was almost like, I told you so. And I got an email from somebody. It was just like, the piece was mean. The guy just got hurt. And I'm thinking like, what if he reads it? And so after that, I tried to be more careful. And even like with, just always have in the back of the head, like, what if this person reads it? What would he think? And that was good. But like at the same time, like I released a basketball book in 2009. And Rick Barry is still mad at me. Like, I think Rick Barry might end up killing me, or at least punching me.
Let's jump ahead to ESPN a little bit.
Yeah.
Go over to page 2. That's when your audience obviously grew and grew.
Yeah.
How exciting was that for you to leap from your AOL position in Boston? Now you're at ESPN.
It was great. I did like 3 freelance columns for them.
Right.
And each one ended up leading the website. And I thought that was a good sign. And then they hired me. And I felt like they needed me, you know, and I was ready. Like I was just ready for a bigger audience. I put a lot of thought into how to change my column, how to make it a little more accessible to people that weren't from Boston, things like that. And it was great, and it did really well. And I went so overboard, I probably got a little burned out, and that's how I ended up at Jimmy's show. I was just tired of writing it, and I felt like I needed a change. I wanted to move. I'd been in Boston 10 years after college. And ended up at Jimmy's show, which was great. And that was a great experience. It really helped me.
So Jimmy was a fan of your column, read you, and he kind of like came at you to get out this way.
Yeah.
That's got to be a cool phone call to get. Jimmy Kimmel loves you and wants you to come write for his new show.
Jimmy likes anyone who loves him. So I praised him in a column for his performance at some roast. So that's what I got to do.
Oh, that's why he called you. Okay.
But yeah, he convinced me to. Right around when we became friends, ABC was trying to get him to host that show. It was just, he's like, can I talk to you? I got to talk to you about something. It was like during that summer of 2002. And I was like, all right. And he's like, I think ABC's going to give me this show. I want to hire you to write for it. And I'm just thinking like, well, from here? And he's like, no, you're going to move to LA. and they flew me out, me and my then fiance, to LA for the weekend. And it was beautiful. It was like mid-September. It's like 75. I just totally got seduced.
Yeah.
It was like right after an especially awful winter in Boston, followed by an equally awful summer where it was just
Right.
like 98 every day and
Right.
like everybody's ready to kill each other. And we came out here just like, we should just move here. And that was it. I've been out here 14 years.
Because on paper, you're not an LA guy. You're a
I
Boston,
still-
you're a Boston guy.
I know,
You
but
know what I mean?
for the Boston people, I think I've been gone too long now.
Yeah.
Boston's very provincial in the best way. I mean that as a compliment. Like every time I go back, they're always like, "When are you coming back?" But they just can't believe I'm not back yet, and I kind of can't believe it either. But that's like the best thing about Boston is people in Boston really genuinely, honestly believe Boston is the best place to live, and we have the best
Yeah.
teams, and we have the best buildings,
Yep.
and we have the best everything. And when you leave that, they're just confused. It's like a
Right.
mistake.
Right.
Why would you leave? This is so great. Look at us. But that's the best thing about Boston. I miss that. I miss so many things about Boston, but that's one of them.
When you left Boston, did you figure, I'm going to LA for a little while, see if the show works out, and then I'll be back eventually? Or did you feel like, I'm going to start this life in LA?
No, I thought I was coming back.
Yeah.
I just assumed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I'd be back as soon as the Celtics got good. And then in 07, they got good. They
did,
traded
yeah.
for KG.
Right?
And we just bought a house in LA. And I had a son coming, and just never happened. Now I'm here. Now I'm stuck here.
So what did you take away from Kimmel that you can bring to this show now? Having watched him, having written for a talk show, is there anything you take from that?
Yeah, I think they put Jimmy in a bad spot with how fast they put the show up, which we kind of knew at the time, but you can talk yourself into anything in the moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, he'd finished Man Show, he was doing all these different projects, and all of a sudden we were on after the Super Bowl.
Right.
You know, and we were still hiring people that month, and all of a sudden we're on the air. And I think in the internet era, it would have been, the show was so disjointed, it had some good elements to it, but it was just too different. And I think in the internet era, once the internet really, like 10 years later, I think we would have been in real trouble.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, people watched the first one and like, yeah, that's okay, it's not very good, and that was it. And he got left alone.
Right.
And we had a year to figure it out. And I think it's really hard to hire people. That was one lesson I heard. It took him a couple years to get all the right people
Right.
around him. And that show is a grind. Like I could never do that show. I don't understand. I think the people like your buddy Matt Lauer, Jimmy, like late night hosts and morning people, I think you have to just go insane. I don't get it. Like to just be able to do that every day and just
Yeah.
rise to the level of a certain energy. So I watched him that first year, and I don't think his office like had no windows, and you could see like the color in his face was starting to change. And I was like, I remember suggesting to him, like, I think you need to move offices. Like you need like air and the sun, and you need to be able to see the sky. He's like, that's a good idea, good idea. And he changed, but it was such a grueling first year. So, you know, we're doing a weekly show. It's not, I don't think as intimidating.
Right.
But at the same time, like there's good lessons, like be super prepared, get stuff in the bank, try a bunch of different things, launch at the right pace. Like they gave me a ton of time to figure out what the show was. And you know, that's a good thing, I think.
I think part of the appeal for people that go into HBO, whether it's a dramatic show or a comedy or what you're doing, is that they have a reputation for just collecting good talent and letting that talent do its thing. Was
Yeah.
that the draw with HBO for you?
100%. I was at a place that, you know, a company that made billions of dollars basically showing games and on SportsCenter. And they also want to do a whole bunch of other stuff. But ultimately, those were the things that made the company that money, and you always knew it. And talent was replaceable. The games were what was going to make money. HBO, the talent is the game.
Right.
And they succeed and they make money because they make bets on people. And they make bets on creators, and they make bets on performers and showrunners, and they know that's their business and it's their job to put those people in a position to succeed, which, you know, I've never really had before. And that's been cool. That's been different. And you can, you know, both methods work. I don't think one is right and one is wrong, but for me, it's better to be at HBO.
You obviously left ESPN under terms that weren't necessarily dictated by you. You found out on Twitter, I guess, that you guys were parting ways.
That's kind of a misnomer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you knew before the Twitter, the message that went
I knew
out.
I was leaving for months before,
Right.
and they knew it too, and it was like a cat and mouse game.
But the official announcement was...
Yeah, you know, it definitely got a little, there was stuff going on behind the scenes, and then it became who can
Right.
spin it, which I never knew we had advanced to that level of the video game. But it's all good. I was mad at the time, but it was, I knew I was leaving, and I had a great run there, and you know, got to do some great things, and they certainly allowed me to succeed and thrive for a long time. I think probably longer than the over-under was. The way that place is built, it's just, you know, I was there for almost 14 years and did a lot of cool things. So I think if you did my ESPN tenure, if you just played it, if you simulated it, Nate Silver simulated my ESPN tenure, there's probably some versions where I'm out in like a year.
Right.
You know, and there's probably other versions where I'm there for 30 years. I don't know, you know, so 14 was about right, or 13, whatever it was.
From what I know about it, you had good relationships with a lot of people at ESPN.
Well, you know this, but you know this because I worked with your sister.
That's true. But I happen to know that you had good relationships with people all the way at the top of the organization, right?
That's true.
And so where did it turn where you both looked at each other and said, we just can't do this anymore?
I think people had this impression that like it ended badly. I'm not friends with people there. Like I was there for a long time. I probably knew the last couple of years just because what was happening at the top wasn't the way it was before. And I had a lot of people in my life that I didn't have the same relationship that I had with a couple of the people that when I was doing my best were people directly tied to me. And that's, you kind of eventually get it. Like certain people are gonna have certain people, you know? And I was lucky enough to have the right people for a while, and then I wasn't.
Was there anything in that back and forth with ESPN that you look back on and be like, maybe I shouldn't have said that, maybe I shouldn't have dared them to suspend me, maybe I shouldn't have said this about Goodell? Or is that just you putting yourself out there and living with the consequences of it?
Nah, I'm totally happy with how it worked out. I think, you know, it is what it is. I think there's a lot people don't know that I think would put more color into what happened, but I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to go backwards and be like, and then this happened. I'm not going to write a tell-all book. But, you know, it's a really messed up place to work in a lot of ways. And on the other hand, most places are, you know. I think you just read like what happens in the industry, and every network has challenges. And it's really, I don't know anybody who's like, I'm in the greatest situation ever. And like, at HBO right now, I'm in a great situation. Will that change 3 years from now? I don't know. I'm just enjoying it right now.
Do you have a tough time? You sort of have this, going back to that Boston Herald days, you have a reputation as being kind of a renegade, right? Like, you got your thing, you know what you want to do. Will it be easier now for you that you, technically with The Ringer, you don't have a boss, right? There's nobody for you to spar with. It's your thing. Is that better for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm also older. Like, I look back, if I had a regret with some of the ESPN stuff, it's just like getting bent out of shape about something that was never going to change anyway, trying to change things that can't change, not understanding why certain things happen when they made no sense, and just instead of just being like, all right, well, that made no sense, I should be happy I have this, this, and this. You know, I think if you're really competitive, you can dwell on certain things, and I think now I'm at the point where it's just like, this is great. I have a great situation, and I work for a great place, and I have a bunch of great people in my life, and stuff that maybe would have not bounced off me as well 5 years ago, it just bounces off me now, you know? I think having kids that get older really helps.
Yeah.
Puts it in they always said like puts it in perspective, but you know, like they had all these billboards around LA, and my daughter saw one and just started making fun of me. And,
Right. You need that. All right, so I tune into your show
Yeah.
Wednesday night on HBO. What do I see? What does the show look like?
Sports, pop culture, a little tech, but I love conversations. I like talking to people. I've enjoyed talking to you.
So
and this
far, so good.
commissary I bought you.
Yes, you bought it out.
Yeah, I bought it out. No, I think one thing I've learned over the last 9-10 years from my podcast, mainly just watching how popular the podcast forum came, and how people who would tell me that they just listened to my podcast but they didn't read my column, which I was always amazed by.
Yeah.
It's just, I think there's a place still for conversations. I mean, that's one of the things you're trying to do with your show.
Yep.
I don't think that really exists as like it should on television. I think Mars show does a good job of bouncing around, navigating between different segments that have good conversations. The late night shows, Jimmy's probably the closest, but even that format, it's like 4 or 5 minutes a pop. You got an audience. And I've been on those shows, you've been on those shows, like you come out and your attention is toward the audience and not the host, and you're back and forth, and it's not organic.
Right.
I like interviewing people without notes, like you.
Yep.
Like you like that as well.
Definitely.
And just trying to get to places, but also, you know, I need to be in the show. We figured out a couple of fun wrinkles for having giving my takes on things without making it too goofy.
Right.
And I'm excited. Like, you know, I wrote that column for so long, and now so many people have columns. There's so much on the internet, and I could write the greatest column I ever wrote, and people are like, that was great, and then they just go on to the next thing. And TV's kind of become an underrated medium almost.
Definitely.
You know, it's like there's just not a lot of good TV shows, and it's almost the you have the least competition for whatever lane you're trying to be in. Not you, just anybody. So the show I'm trying to do, like HBO only has like a few of these shows. You know, they have Bill Maher and John Oliver, and they have Real Sports once a month, and they have the Fight Game 6 times a year. But it's a great channel that people respect, and the goal is to like, can this be a show that if I'm a celebrity, I'd want to go on? I'm like, I want to talk basketball with that guy, or you know, a lot of things we're gonna do is like structure certain segments. Like, there's reasons people are on. You know, we're gonna have a 3-person conversation, and then we're not just throwing people together. It's not like, be like, hey, here's Willie Geist, and here's Ice-T, the rapper, and they're gonna talk about
We're great
Facebook.
together.
Oh, you guys are good.
Yeah,
I didn't realize.
we're great together.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize. But no, there'd be a reason. Like, you want to put people together that makes sense. You know, why are they on? Wait, if I'm home, I'm like, why am I watching these 2 people with Bill? What's the purpose? And you know, we put a lot of thought into that, and also just like, I don't know, I'm pretty picky. Like, I don't think my booker likes me that much on the show, because I'm just like, no, that person doesn't work, or no, I'm not that interested in them. Like, really? You're not interested in that person? They're an A-list
So you're
actor.
talking celebrities, athletes, anybody you want to talk to is in this
Right.
space.
Athletes are tougher. Like, you know, you really have to get creative with athletes.
Yeah.
Most of them are just trained not to be interesting.
Right.
Day after day after day, they have to teach themselves to not say anything, you know, and that's a tough thing to get past. So I think one of the things we're going to do on my show is, I think when you put athletes together, I liked how that worked better when I've been in that situation where it's like, you take the star of some basketball team by himself, he's just going to be guarded. But if you put him with another guy that he gets along with, now they're kind of playing off each other. There's a safety to it, and now we can get somewhere. And you know, another thing we're going to do is we're going to film these interviews long form and try to find some chunks that will actually be the chunks for the show. But I want the people to be comfortable. You know, I found like with podcasts sometimes it takes 10, 20 minutes for somebody to warm up.
Yep.
I think my favorite one was Dr. J. It took him like 25 minutes to warm up. I knew it was there. I was just like, you know, dig in. And then finally Dr. J came out. And I was so excited. I was like, oh, there he is. It's Dr. J.
And he's got to trust you. Part of that is trusting you.
Yeah.
And
I don't know why I have this skill, but I'm good at getting people to say stuff that afterwards, like, I shouldn't have said that. But just because I think, and you probably have this too, where it's like when you're genuinely interested in somebody,
Yep.
it makes them want to tell you stuff.
Exactly.
So that's one of the goals, is to have a show where, you know, people that I'm interested in, you know, it's my world. We built this set that it's 4 different conversation spots and there's no audience and people are coming into my place. You know, we shot some test stuff there yesterday. I felt like, this is my place. People, I don't want to go on location and be on and play a road game on somebody else's turf. Like, they gotta come to my place and let's talk.
And I think
with that said, I would totally go to the White House.
in a second.
If Michelle Obama's like, I'm in, I'm like, done. Let's go. We're going to Washington.
First show.
Road game.
Blow up the format.
Yeah, I'm in.
So that begs the question: who is the dream guest for any given Wednesday? Who do you want to sit across from for half an hour?
The dream guest would be Tupac. I go with dead people first.
Shooting high,
guest.
man. Yeah. How about the hologram? The
to
Tupac
bring back
hologram?
A dead person would be my dream guest.
That makes some news.
I don't want to say one person, because then if somebody else happened to be watching this, I'll be like, screw that guy. I'm not his #1 choice. But
what kind of person? Is it celebrity? Is it politician? Is there somebody who's like outside your wheelhouse that you'd want to talk to that maybe you wouldn't expect to see sitting across from you?
Well, my dream guest, I would have loved to have gotten Nicholson, just because I don't think he's done an interview in 10 years. I'm not positive he's alive. I don't, like, where is Jack Nicholson? If he just popped up on my show, people are like, oh my God, it's Jack Nicholson.
Now that you mention it, there has not been proof of life for...
Where is he?
I don't know.
And have Jack Nicholson on and just talk about, all right, you've been in those awesome seats for 40 years. Like, just tell me stories.
Yeah.
Like, what was it like to be at this game, that game?
Yeah.
That would probably be the most excited I would be for an interview. But I've already done some good ones. Like, but even before this show, like, I already talked to Larry Bird.
Right.
So this would be like, talk to Obama. Well,
Yeah.
Larry Bird's here. Obama, I wasn't nearly as nervous for Obama. Larry Bird, because he's tall too. Athletes are tall. I think it'll be fun to interview LeBron, because if it happens, just because he's another one of those who doesn't want to say anything and is just very careful, but it's in there. And I think he's a really interesting guy. And when we had him on after Game 7 in 2013, and it was me and Magic and Jalen, and it was the best interview he's ever given.
I remember it.
He was so happy, and Magic was there, and I busted his balls with the first question, and he was like laughing, and then it was just, he was great, and he just described everything, and all of us were like he left, and we were all like, what the hell? Why doesn't he always do that? Right. So it's in there. You just got to get to it.
And you'll pull it out of them. I think
try.
You're smart too to keep that podcast feel. Because we were talking about this before, so many times if it's a TV show, there's all this contrivance to it, and it's time to go sit down now, and the lights are on and roll and go. But if you can keep that feel that you've always had, that wins, right?
Yeah, and we know it works.
Yeah.
I think one of my frustrations with late night shows is how the guest comes on and has to follow like some script, and I know why they do it, but you know, I think. The show we're trying to do, I'm gonna try not to. I don't want them to tell me the focus stuff. I think you have to trust your instincts a little bit. And if the show, if there's something really wrong with it, then you address it. But I think for the most part, it's me talking to people and me writing stuff, and those are 2 things I know I'm okay at.
And the reputation for HBO is that they leave you alone for the most part. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's been your experience.
I think it depends how much money they spend on the show.
Right. So you'll be hearing from them then?
No. For me, I'm fine.
Okay.
I think if I was doing the show like on water, like if it was an aquatic show with 100-person water crew, it might be tougher.
Then you get some notes.
Yeah, this is just like a 5,000-foot studio and no audience. Like, I think I'm easy. I want to be one of the easier HBO employees.
You and Lena Dunham, right?
Yeah. Is Lena Dunham easy?
I don't know. Easy-ish.
She's my friend. She's an easy friend.
Yeah,
I guess she's easy. Yeah, she just delivers her shows.
So is Lena Dunham the kind of person you have on the show? Like, I'm trying to get to the core of like who the Bill Simmons guest is.
Oh, that'd be all types of
celebrity with
people.
something to say, right?
Lena, definitely.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm really interested in. It really depends on who it is. Like, Tony Romo is awesome.
Yeah.
Jimmy's friends with him, so we had dinner, and I was like, this guy's awesome. I want to have this guy on my show, and he's just really candid and smart about quarterback and the way he sees things. Like, buy Tony Romo stock, because he's going to be on Fox for 30 years after he retires. So there's people like that you know are going to be good, and then there's people like Denzel, where it's like, well, Denzel, you know, he doesn't really like doing interviews, and you know, it depends what mood he's in. I'm like, that's a great challenge. I would love to interview Denzel. Let's get there.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's a super interesting guy. Could I get there with him? Would it be bad? I don't know. But he'll never come on, so it doesn't matter.
You don't know. If you build that format, you make people comfortable, he might come on.
Oh, I forgot.
Right?
One of my dream guests is Eddie Murphy.
Oh.
I'm only saying dream guests that won't come on.
I'm going to say that's a tough one.
Eddie doesn't do anything.
Why doesn't Eddie do anything?
I don't know.
You're Eddie Murphy. Everyone loves you.
He was so great at such an early age. I think it seems like he's almost afraid to mess with
Right.
how great he was, and so he just did kids movies.
Okay, so we're just going to do some hot topics with it. Ready?
Yeah.
Deflategate. Where does it end? How does
Smear
it end?
campaign.
Why
Supreme
are we still
Court.
talking about this?
Smear campaign. I want Brady to take it to the Supreme Court. I want it to be like Brown versus the Board of Education and Roe versus Wade. I want it to be on the short list of cases that have changed America.
By the way, it's one step away from that, right?
We're getting close.
Crazy.
The Supreme Court might get involved.
Over what again?
Apparently he deflated the balls by like 7% in this gigantic, tiny inflation scheme that he was running with two ball boys.
Yeah.
For reasons that are unclear, and nobody was actually measuring the air pressure in the balls and has a record of it, but yet they clearly think he cheated. It's unbelievable. And then he's supposed to hand his phone over to the NFL?
No.
I wouldn't give the NFL my saliva. I'd be afraid to give them anything. So I'm gonna give them my phone with all my texts from my friends and family. Are you crazy?
No.
Who would do that?
No.
They
Never.
leak stuff.
Never.
Yeah.
Ever. What do we make of Kobe Bryant's legacy now that he's done? Where does he fit in this big picture that you talk about of basketball history?
He's one of the best 10 or 12 players ever, one of the best two guards ever. I've never seen a farewell tour like it.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
What's that? Okay. Kobe Bryant retires.
He did?
You didn't. You should
Yeah.
follow the game
What?
a little more closely if you're going to do this
I
show.
thought he retired 4 years ago.
It only felt like it.
Kind of.
Where do we put him in the pantheon that you talk about?
Top 10, top 12.
Yeah.
I think having the Laker fans behind him really helped his legacy, because he's really like, you know, one of the more me first superstars we've ever had. It was like, and it worked. They won 5 titles, but the first 3 was Shaq, who for 3 years was one of the most unstoppable players in the history of the league. And then the last 2 were legitimate. I still feel as a Celtics fan, if KG doesn't get hurt, I think we win in 09. Who knows in 2010? But
Not that you're bitter about those.
I'm not bitter at all.
No.
I never think about Game
No.
7 in 2010 and how Kendrick Perkins wasn't there and Nate Robinson only played 3 minutes. I don't think about that at all. No, it's fine. Where I came to grips with it is just not my style. I love team basketball. I don't like the one-on-one stuff as much. I don't think it would have been that fun to play with him. But he was such a great competitor. And I think his teammates were genuinely scared of him. Like, I think he actually scared them into getting to where he wanted them to go. And then eventually, that as he got less and less effective, that backfired, and people are like, this guy's crazy. I gotta get away from this guy.
Well, he talks about that for one season. He tried to be the team guy,
And it
put his
backfired.
arms around everybody and
Yeah.
say, it's okay, you threw that pass into the first row. And he realized he just couldn't be that guy.
Right,
And he
he's
went
not that
back
guy.
He went back to the old Kobe the next
Yeah.
year, and they won the title.
He did. They did.
Yeah.
Was that nice? Yeah.
Someone's got their pocket radio on. So isn't that the thing that made Michael great, though? Right? Like,
Yeah, but Kobe wasn't Michael.
Difficult teammate.
Michael's the best basketball player ever.
Kobe's close, though, right?
Michael
Nobody was
was-
going to be Michael.
Michael was like a genius, though. I just feel like you give geniuses a wider
Yeah.
pass. Like, he was so great and so unique and such a freaking maniac and so good at what he did. Like, he should have been like that. It would have been weird if he wasn't. I don't know. There's not one right way to do it, I don't think, to be the best guy on a team. We've seen all different versions. Kobe's version is the one that I probably like the least.
Okay, next one is, let's rank these 3 sports movies.
Yeah,
Hoosiers,
yeah.
Rocky IV, and Karate Kid.
Karate Kid hasn't aged well. It's too 80s.
Really?
It feels really dated. A lot of the 80s movies have not held up that well. Rocky IV also has not held up well. There's a lot of
sure it was
holes.
good in the moment.
I've discovered a lot of plot holes in Rocky IV. I think Rocky III's held up the best.
Yeah.
So I would go Rocky III over all three of those.
Oh, Rocky 3.
Rocky III is great.
Is that
Rocky
your-
III is an incredible achievement.
That's your best sports movie, Rocky 3? Put it up there? It's hard.
It's tough. It used to be The Natural and Hoosiers were 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Neither of them have aged well. HD has not helped The Natural because Robert Redford's like 65 in it, and the better the picture is, the older he looks. It's like, oh, here's Roy Hobbs, where he's been. It's like, Roy Hobbs is like 58. How is he The Natural? He's old. I would say that. I think The Longest Yard is gaining steam for me.
Oh, that's a
Burt
good
Reynolds,
call.
even though that's a million years old, that one's held up really well.
Yeah.
My daughter and I watched Victory, which is incredible, and does not get its just due. It's got, now that I like soccer more than I used to, the soccer's
You have come around on
Off
soccer.
the charts.
You were
I
never a
have.
soccer guy.
I wasn't.
How'd you make that turn?
I like the passing, and then once my daughter started playing,
Right.
and I kind of started to get the spacing and stuff, then I really liked it. And now I spend my weekends in soccer fields watching 11-year-old girls play soccer.
Are you the guy who's up at like 6 in the morning on Saturday watching Champions League and all the stuff that in Europe, or you're not that into it?
No, because the West Coast, there's like
Too
only
early.
3 terrible things about living on the West Coast, and one is watching soccer. Like some of them are on at like 5 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
But who wants to watch soccer at 6 in the morning? Like unless you're still hungover or you're still drinking.
Even in New York, it's 9 o'clock. Everybody's
too
in the
early.
bar. It's ridiculous.
It's too early. Plus, I have youth girls soccer. It's so much better.
Way better.
So much more interesting. Girls cry. Guys don't cry in the Premier League. Girls get, take a header. They start sobbing. So much more drama.
Going in and sweeping the leg.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, the suspense of there's some girl on the other team that really seems like she's 15.
Right.
Like, have we checked her card? There's no way that girl's in the 5th grade.
That's as old as time. When you and I were playing, there was always a kid on the other
Oh,
team
yeah.
with a little mustache. And you're
It
like,
still
hold on a
happens.
second.
There's some chicanery.
It's still going on, right?
Yeah.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.